1. Michaela Garrett. Michaela Garrett was only 9 years old when she woke up at 5 a.m., unusually early, in order to write a poem. The people knock on doors of steel. The people knock. The people kneel. They think of things that aren't real. Outside those doors of steel, the people walk. The people know that outside those doors, the people know. The people think that you may say. The people think that they too may. They lack the confidence you have. They think it's real, the dreams you have, the dreams they feel. Michaela's mother was highly disconcerted, as this seemed a rather ominous and dark poem for an otherwise cheerful 9-year-old to write. Michaela said that she had awoken after hearing noises in her attic, and that she had written the poem about the people who were kidnapped and trapped in the attic. Her mother pressed her on who these people outside steel doors were, presumably referring to the kidnappers as they stood outside the doors as opposed to inside, but Michaela was vague and provided no more details. Later that week, Michaela and her friend rode their scooters to the Rainbow Market, a local convenience store they often frequented on Mission Boulevard near Lafayette Avenue. After picking up some snacks, they exited the store and, forgetting that they had ridden their scooters, began to walk home. Upon realizing their mistake, they turned around to grab their scooters, but mysteriously, Michaela's had now been moved. It was now leaning against a light-colored car. As Michaela went to grab the scooter, a blond man with pockmarks or other facial scarring grabbed Michaela by the waist and forced her into the vehicle. Michaela's friend ran back into the convenience store and alerted the clerk, who quickly came to help, but it was too late. Michaela was gone. In the chaos, a false description was given by the shop owner to police, and therefore, for 2 days, the public and police looked for a burgundy car as opposed to a blonde, clean-shaven man with long, scraggly hair in a tan or light-colored car. It wasn't until Michaela's friend was properly interviewed by police that the correct description was given out to the press and public. But by that time, almost 48 hours, the most crucial part of an investigation, had passed. Over 15,000 tips came into police and the FBI, with the most egregious false claim coming from inmate Roger Haggard, who claimed to have buried the body of Michaela in Hunters Point, a neighborhood in San Francisco. But when investigators flew him out to show them the location of the body, he made them dig aimlessly around for 8 hours before finally admitting he had made it all up, to give the family, as he put it, peace of mind. 6.5 years was added to his sentence for making a false statement to police and causing Michaela's family undue harm. Due to the Bay Area's concentrated population, there were a plethora of sex offenders and high-profile murder cases originating in nearby towns, so the FBI combed through past offenders, looking for clues. Specifically, they were looking at the Speed Freak killers and the kidnappers of J.C. Lee Dugard, but no evidence linked either set of suspects to the crime. To this day, Michaela's mother passes out flyers and yellow ribbons in the Hayward neighborhood where her daughter went missing over 20 years ago. Michaela's mother keeps a blog called Dear Michaela, where she posts updates of her life and the case in the form of letters to her missing daughter. Her heartbreak and frustration at the lack of progress in the case is palpable in the blog, and she ends her latest post with these heartbreaking words. I love you, baby girl, forever and ever. Remember, I am always in your heart. When you walk into a dark room, if you reach out your hand, I will always be there to hold it. Michaela's poem has been analyzed for clues, but so far, nobody can piece together why she woke up that early morning and wrote such ominous words, just 1 week before her disappearance. If you have any tips on this missing persons case, please contact the Hayward Police Department at 510-293-7272. 2. Lisa Nicole Lopez. Lisa Nicole Lopez, also known by her stage name Left Eye, was a singer in the well-known female hip-hop group TLC, famous for their song, No Scrubs. While shooting a documentary about her journey building a youth center while on a spiritual retreat in Honduras, Lisa and her traveling partners were being driven around by an assistant when a young boy ran out in front of their car and was struck and killed. Lisa was profoundly affected by the boy's death and believed that it was not him but her that was supposed to die that day. She made this assumption on camera based on the fact that a close friend had told her previously that an evil spirit, the embodiment of death, was trailing after her. She also claimed on camera that the boy who died carried two similarities to the star that were striking. The boy also had the surname Lopez and had the same shoe size as Lisa. A few days later, while she was out driving with 6 friends in the middle of the day, Lisa's car swerved to avoid a slowed or stopped vehicle, and as a result, quickly veered off the road and flipped over. Everybody survived the crash except for Lisa. The crash was caught on tape and is the last portion of her documentary. Her premonition had come true. Death took her as well. William T. Stead. William T. Stead was a famous English writer and an avid supporter of the poor. He was at the forefront of providing affordable English literature for all to read and enjoy. But it is in this literature that he predicts his own death on the sinking of a large boat with a lack of lifeboats. Some clues can be taken from his novel, From Old World to the New, from 1892, when he recounts watching as a ship runs into a large and mostly hidden iceberg. Quote, "The waters bubbled and foamed. I could see the heads of a few swimmers in the eddy. One after another, they sank, and I saw them no more." It is in this tale that the captain of a ship is warned of a huge iceberg, but is unable to avoid it. Instead has to watch in paralyzed fear as many on board perish in the freezing waters. Taken from another one of his short stories published in 1886 titled How the Mail Steamer Went Down in the Mid-Atlantic, Stead writes, quote, "I calculated that by loading all 8 boats down low to the water's edge and packing the children along the bottom boards, we might be able to accommodate 390 people. We were carrying 916 altogether." Later, in the same story, he says, quote, "A loud crack, followed by a wallowing noise like thunder, rendered all other sounds insignificant, and a captain who was going out to New York said, quote, 'The bulkhead's gone. We must take our chance now.'" At the end of Stead's story, he makes an ominous note, quote, "This is exactly what might take place and what will take place if the liners are sent to sea short of boats." Stead became a first-class passenger on board the Titanic, which experienced an eerily similar fate. Once Stead realized that the ship he was aboard was sinking in the same fashion as in his writings, he was calm and meditative in his response and to the chaos around him. Survivor Miss William Shelley, for instance, recalls that Stead attracted attention, quote, "even in that awful hour, on account of his superhuman composure and divine work." She also recalls that he, quote, "could do no more. He stood alone at the edge of the deck, in a prayerful attitude of profound meditation." While some famous accounts of his death came from a 1955 piece of literature which describes him as sitting in the smoking room and reading a book as the ship went down, his actual moment of death was far more parallel to his writing and far more agonizing. Another passenger of the fated ship recalls Stead's moment of death, from which we can draw striking parallels to his previous stories and his descriptions of the fictitious victims of the capsized boat and their slowly freezing appendages. Stead writes, quote, "My companion can no longer keep his feet. My strength is failing." This is strikingly similar to the scene survivor Philip Mock recalls, as he remembers Stead clinging to a raft with Colonel John Jacob Astor. He says, "Their feet became frozen, and they were compelled to release their hold. Both were drowned." Of the 2,224 passengers on the Titanic, 1,500 perished that day. He was not the only one who had fearsome premonitions. Major Archibald Willingham Butt was so terrified of his first-class journey that he made his lawyer finalize his last will and testament. He also perished in the accident. Chief Officer Henry Tingle Wild confessed his fears in his written correspondence to his sister. He says, quote, "I still don't like this ship. I have a queer feeling about it." He also did not survive the sinking. Cathy Hobbs. Cathy Hobbs experienced much stress as a young girl. Her parents divorced, and in the 7th grade her best friend died of a heart condition. Cathy frequently spoke of her own fears of death and insisted to anybody that would listen that she would not live past the age of 16. Her mother recalls Cathy's high-stress conversation with her. Quote, "She got very teary-eyed one night and told me, 'Mom, I don't want to get any older. I want to be a little girl.' And her mother replied to her, 'Cathy, we all have to grow up. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but we all do it.' And Cathy told her, 'But I'm not going to.'" Cathy's fears were so intense that she lived a very solitary lifestyle and refused to leave the house on most days. But once her 16th birthday rolled around, she felt a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted. Her mother remembers Cathy's words of relief. Quote, "I made it, Mom. I made it. I'm 16. I did it. I'm alive." Freed from her dark premonitions, Cathy enrolled as a beauty student and was happy again. However, on July 23, 1987, just 3 months after her 16th birthday, she told her mother she was running to the corner store. Strangely enough, she insisted that her mother give her a kiss before leaving, her reasoning being that she knew her mother would be asleep before she got home. Her mother assumed she was going to make the trip with friends from the apartment complex. However, none of those friends were available, so Cathy went alone. At 11:17, Cathy purchased a paperback novel from the corner store, which was verified by receipts and interviews with the clerk, who said nothing seemed unusual about the transaction or Cathy's mood. Cathy's mother had already retired to bed for the night, and Cathy was not discovered as missing until the next morning. Shockingly enough, her mother also showed signs of foreseeing her daughter's death, as she recalls in an interview that she woke up that night at 3 a.m. after experiencing a disturbing dream. Quote, "I woke up out of a sound sleep. I felt like I had been hit on the head, and all of the sudden I got a very peaceful feeling, and I thought, well, it's over now, and I fell back asleep." While the area that Cathy went missing from was always quite populated, even at that time of night, there were no witnesses to her abduction. 9 days later, a geologist studying rock formations uncovered the grisly truth. Cathy's body was lying on the ground next to 2 large stones, which bore the telltale stains of dried blood. Further testing would reveal the blood type matched Cathy's, and her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, just like in her mother's dream. Tire tracks showed a vehicle had pulled into the area, turned left, and pulled right back out. A search of Cathy's room yielded letters she had written to her family, dated just 1 month prior to her 16th birthday, where she detailed her love for her family and comforted them and told them not to be sad over her inevitable death. Later that month, the Las Vegas police received an anonymous tip on their recorded tip line that gave details of Cathy's abduction and murder, which no civilian could have known. The recording correctly describes where Cathy was taken, what she was wearing, and where her body was found. They also gave a description of the car supposedly used, along with the license plate and the driver's name, Robbie. However, when the police ran the plate number, no such car existed. Despite multiple pleas to the public for the anonymous caller to come forward, they never heard from him again. Michael Lee Lockhart, a serial killer who was already in the process of being convicted for 4 other murders, was the most likely suspect. He had stolen a car whose blue fibers matched the trace fibers collected at the scene, and receipts found in his possession matched the time and place of Cathy's last outing. Because he was already being sentenced to death for the other murders, Nevada decided not to pursue further investigation. While he never officially confessed, some sources cite a, quote, virtual confession, where it seems he indicated that he was her killer, although that has never been proven in a court of law. Cathy lived to be 16 years, 3 months, and 3 days old. While she did live to see her 16th birthday, her fears of not living past 16 seem to have been correct. The Rayker Sisters. On Labor Day 1974, 15-year-old Mary and 12-year-old Susan Rayker walked to a nearby Zayre discount store to purchase school supplies. When the girls didn't come home by the evening, their parents, Rita and Fred Rayker, notified the police. During the investigation, Jacob Younger, a neighbor, said he had chatted briefly with them at the store. In a 1977 interview with the Minneapolis Star, Younger claimed he heard Suzanne tell Mary, quote, "I don't want to go with that man. I don't like him. Let's not." According to Younger, the girls then walked towards the store's grocery section, which was closed for Labor Day, but in the same general direction as the women's coat department. Later, Younger told police he recalled seeing a large, nervous-looking man outside the store about the same time he saw the girls. Another witness reported seeing the sisters at a tavern on the other side of St. Cloud in the company of 2 men and about a dozen other teenagers. He particularly remembered the word Rayker on Mary's shirt. Then, after 26 days of searching, their bodies were found in the Quarry Park and Nature Reserve in Waite Park, the town right next to St. Cloud. Suzanne's body was found at the bottom of a rock quarry under a bush. She had been stabbed 13 times with a smallish knife, and her fully clothed corpse was partially concealed by a bush. Mary's body was located by divers on a ledge 40 feet underwater. She had been stabbed 6 times. Her jeans and panties were strewn on the cliff as if someone had attempted to toss them into the water. Her bra had been cut into 4 pieces, and her underwear was cut, and her white sweater had been slit in an unusual manner, but what was left of the garment remained on her body. There have been multiple suspects in the case. 2 years after the murder, cops zeroed in on Herbert D. Notch, Jr., 18, an employee at the Zayre grocery section, and James A. Wagner, 17, when they were arrested for a crime with striking similarities to the Rayker case. Notch and James kidnapped a 14-year-old girl, Sue Dukowitz, while she was working at a St. Cloud convenience store. They took her out to a gravel pit outside of town and sexually assaulted her. Then, to the surprise of his accomplice, Notch pulled out a knife and stabbed the girl. Miraculously, Sue survived the incident. Just like the Rayker case, a small knife was used. And, just like the Rayker case, the girl's sweater was slit up the middle, but wasn't fully removed, and her bra and underwear were cut from her body, and the garments thrown into a lake. In both cases, the girls were taken to an isolated area, and all 3 girls had been stabbed and hidden away. Although Notch was considered a suspect in the Rayker case by many, he was never charged for it, and police refused to comment. Notch was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the attempted murder of Sue Dukowitz. A more prominent suspect in the Rayker murders was the Reverend Richard Akeroth, a monk at St. John's Abbey in Collegeville. The Rayker sisters had been with a group of kids from church that Akeroth took to a lakeshore cabin in Beltrami County 2 years prior to their deaths. Later, the priest was accused of more than 360 counts of sexual molestation of boys under his care. However, all of Akeroth's known victims were male, and he insisted he had nothing to do with the murders of Mary and Suzanne. Finally, in the early 1990s, Akeroth took a polygraph test and passed. Akeroth died in May of 2015. A few leads have been looked at over the years, but none of them led anywhere. The most unnerving thing about this case is what they had found written after the sisters' death in Mary's diary. In her journal, she wrote, quote, "Should I die, I ask that my stuffed animals be given to my sister, and if I am murdered, find my killer. See that justice wins over. I have a few reasons to fear for my life, and what I ask is important." Sadly, it's been more than 34 years, and no one has been charged with her murder. Authorities still have the girls' clothing, and while DNA testing in 2006 revealed no extra clues, The items could be tested again as the technology advances. If you have any information on the Rayker case, call the Stearns County Sheriff's Office at 320-251-4240. There is a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the case.